My name is Camila R. Navarro. I am 31 years old. I remember the smell of burned rubber, the sting of cold air cutting into my lungs, and the desperate voices shouting over each other. But above all, I remember the sentence that carved itself into my bones, a sentence I didn't even hear until later, when a nurse finally said it out loud. If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork. Those were my mother's words, my own mother, while I lay crushed in a mangled car on Thanksgiving week. And that was the night everything changed. My family, my future, and the meaning of the word guardian. People like to assume military life hardens you, that a Navy uniform is some kind of armor that numbs you to pain. I wish that were true. At 31 years old, after 12 years serving my country, nothing prepared me for the kind of hurt that doesn't bleed, the kind that comes from home, the kind that looks you in the face and shrugs. The accident happened on a gray Wednesday evening, the day before Thanksgiving. I had just finished a long shift on base in Norfolk and was heading home to my parents' house in Chesapeake. It was supposed to be an easy drive, 40 minutes, maybe 50 with holiday traffic. I wasn't excited exactly, but I'd told myself I should show up. Thanksgiving was the one holiday my mother insisted on making into a big event, more for reputation than for family, and I, like a fool who still hoped for something warm, decided to go. As I pulled out onto I-64, the sky was already spitting rain, that thin, annoying drizzle that makes asphalt look like black glass. Headlights smeared across the wet road, doubling back at me. Wipers squeaked back and forth in a rhythm that made my nerves itch. I turned the radio down, tightened my grip on the wheel, and told myself to focus. Traffic crawled at a steady pace. Minivans full of kids heading to grandma's, pickup trucks hauling grocery bags and pies, service members like me trying to beat the worst of the storm. A few miles in, for a brief moment, it almost felt peaceful. I even caught myself practicing small talk in my head. Hey, Mom! No, the uniform isn't wrinkled. Yes, the Navy is still a real job. I imagined her rehearsed smile, my father clapping me on the shoulder, just hard enough to look supportive in front of guests, my sister Stephanie in some designer dress, perfectly positioned at my mother's side like a matching accessory. Somewhere deep down, under the sarcasm, a younger version of me still wanted a different scene, a different kind of welcome. I told myself not to think about it. Eyes on the road, Navarro. Just get there in one piece. The drizzle turned the world into a smear of reds and whites and gray. You know that kind of rain that doesn't look like much but turns the highway into a trap, the kind that tricks your headlights into reflecting right back at you. That's the kind of night it was. I spotted the truck in the next lane just as it started to fishtail. A big white Ford, its back end sliding out like a tail whipping through water. Later, people would talk about slick patches and sudden braking and maybe a driver checking his phone. In real time, all I saw was several thousand pounds of metal losing its grip on physics and coming straight toward me. I didn't even have time to swear. The impact slammed into my driver's side door with a deafening crack. The world snapped sideways. Metal screamed. Glass exploded, and my body whipped forward, yanked back by the seatbelt. For a split second, there was no up or down, just motion and noise, and the sickening feeling that the world had broken loose from its hinges. Then everything went silent, like someone shoved the whole scene underwater. When sound seeped back in, it came in jagged pieces, a horn blaring somewhere, a woman screaming, someone pounding on my window. The smell of gasoline and rain and hot metal filled my lungs. My vision flickered in and out, like a bad connection. My left arm felt numb. My ribs stabbed me every time I tried to breathe. I couldn't tell if my legs were pinned or if my brain had just stopped mapping my body correctly. Ma'am, stay with me. A man's voice, close, focused, not panicked. A bright light pierced my eyes. Don't move, we're getting you out. I tried to speak, to say my name, to say anything, but my mouth only formed shapes. No sound. A paramedic climbed halfway through the broken doorframe, glass crunching under his boots, shining a penlight into my pupils. His breath fogged in the cold air as he shouted for a stretcher. Possible internal injuries, BP's dropping. He pressed gauze against my forehead. I hadn't even realized it was bleeding. I could feel cold rain on my face, but it didn't ground me the way it should have. Everything felt far away, like it was happening to someone else, somewhere else. The world started dimming around the edges, like someone slowly turning down a dimmer switch. Ma'am, what's your name? I tried again. My tongue felt thick, my throat raw. Your name, ma'am. Stay awake. My voice finally scraped out a broken sound. Camila. Camila, we're taking you to the ER. Do you have family we can call? I thought of my parents' house, the polished table settings, my mother's perfect smile, the fundraiser she'd been bragging about for weeks. I thought of how she liked to say, my girls, when people were watching, and your sister, and that one, when they weren't. My parents, I whispered. Thanksgiving. Those were my last words before the darkness took me completely. When I surfaced again, it was only for a moment. Bright surgical lights glared above me, cold and white, making everything look unreal. Voices overlapped. A mass descended toward my face. Her pressure's crashing. Get that line in. My chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. The air was too thick to pull in. Panic fluttered in me, but my body couldn't keep up with it. Then the world dropped away again. It wasn't until later that I learned what happened during the hour I was unconscious. Hospital protocol required them to contact my emergency contacts, my parents. I had never removed their names, though God knows I should have. Somewhere, a doctor stepped away from the organized chaos and dialed my mother's number. It was the middle of their Thanksgiving Eve party, a fundraiser she'd been planning and bragging about for weeks. I wasn't there to see it, but the nurse who later told me the story made it easy to picture. Sparkling glasses, laughter. My mother in one of her carefully chosen dresses, performing warmth for an audience that adored her. The doctor explained I needed emergency surgery, internal bleeding, a punctured lung, possibly a ruptured spleen. He told her it was life or death. My mother, my biological mother, laughed. Did she really get herself into another mess? She said. Then, louder, to the room full of guests. You see? You see what I deal with? I imagine some people chuckled. Some shifted uncomfortably. No one stopped the music. When the doctor repeated the urgency, she sighed dramatically and said it. If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork. My father wasn't any better. When the call was transferred, he listened quietly, then said, She's 31. She makes her own decisions. Don't drag us into this, and hung up. They didn't come. They didn't sign. They didn't ask if I would live or die. Some parents bring casseroles to the ER. Mine brought indifference. That refusal, their cold, heartless refusal, set into motion the one thing they never expected, someone else stepping up, someone who cared more about my life than the people who created it. I didn't know any of that yet. When I finally woke up for real, hours later, I was in a dim hospital room hooked to monitors. My chest burned. My rib cage felt wrapped in iron bands. My throat was raw from the tubes they'd shoved down it. I blinked up at the ceiling tiles, counting the little gray specks as if they could anchor me. At first, I was just confused. Then the confusion slipped into panic. Had I dreamed the crash? Was this some training scenario? Was I even still in Virginia? I tried to move, and my body answered with a bolt of pain. That settled that. The steady beep of the heart monitor was too calm for what I felt inside. As my vision cleared, I noticed a clipboard hanging at the foot of my bed. It looked harmless. Just paper. Just ink. I didn't know yet that it held a story that would hurt worse than the broken ribs. A nurse noticed me stirring and walked over, her steps soft, her expression gentle. Easy, sweetheart, she said. You're safe. The surgery went well. Safe. The word sat strangely on my chest. I croaked, my voice barely more than air. My parents? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything before she even opened her mouth. They were contacted, she said softly, but they didn't come. Something in me cracked, sharp and hot, but before I could speak, she added quickly, You did have someone here, someone who signed for you. I frowned, the wrinkles in my forehead tugging at the stitches above my brow. Who? She turned the clipboard around so I could see. The letters swam in and out of focus. Painkillers and anesthesia fogged my brain, but one line cut through it all. Under legal guardian, emergency assignment, was a name. A name that wasn't my parents'. A name that made no sense in that moment. Harold G. Bennett. For a second, it just sat there on the page, meaningless. Then my mind slowly matched it to a face. An old man with kind eyes, a crooked smile, and a stubborn way of insisting he didn't need help while clearly needing help. Mr. Bennett, I whispered. The nurse smiled a little. So, you do know him? He insisted on being here. Sat right over there most of the night. She nodded toward the visitor's chair beside my bed. A thin blanket was folded neatly over the armrest. A styrofoam coffee cup sat in the trash, rim stained with dried brown. Memories stirred, sluggish but insistent. I knew Harold Bennett from a volunteer program I'd done off base a couple of years earlier, fixing up houses for aging veterans. His small one-story brick home had been on our list. The front ramp was rotting, the handrail loose, and he'd been too proud to complain to anyone. I remembered kneeling on his front step in my work jeans, power drill in hand, as he tried to offer me lemonade and insisted he could still swing a hammer just fine despite his bad hip. "You let us do our job, Mr. Bennett," I'd said, laughing. "Last thing we need is you taking a tumble while we're trying to help." He'd snorted, adjusting his old Navy cap. "You kids think being old means being useless. I was climbing ladders before your parents were even thinking about you." Then he'd softened, talked about Korea, about cold nights and bad rations, and the kind of loyalty you only understand when bullets are flying past your head. Somewhere in there, he mentioned my grandfather, almost casually. "Your granddad," he'd said, "saved my hide more times than I can count. Tough as nails, that one. Used to say if he ever had grandkids and they ended up in uniform, he'd watch over them wherever he was." Back then, I'd just smiled and wiped sweat from my forehead. "I'm sure he would have," I'd said, not quite believing in ghosts or promises that stretched beyond the grave. Before I left that day, I'd spent an extra hour making sure his ramp was solid, the screws tight, the boards level. It felt like the least I could do. When we finished, he'd clasped my hand with surprising strength. "You ever need anything, sailor," he'd told me, looking me dead in the eye, "you call old Harold. We take care of our own." I'd nodded, thanked him, and filed it away as one of those nice things older vets say. I never imagined he meant it literally. "Where is he?" I asked now, my voice still rough around the edges. "He went home to rest," the nurse said. "Didn't want to leave, but we convinced him you were stable." She hesitated, watching my face closely. "Do you remember what happened?" Images flickered like a broken film. The truck sliding, the impact, the lights, the mask descending. My own voice, weak, saying, "my parents," like it meant something. "Accident," I murmured. "Car, on the way home for Thanksgiving." "That's right," she said gently. "You're lucky, you know. Internal bleeding, a lacerated spleen, cracked ribs. We almost lost you." She adjusted a tube near my arm. If Mr. Bennett hadn't signed the consent forms, surgery would have been delayed. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. My parents, they didn't sign. Her eyes darted away for a second, and she busied herself with my IV line, the way people do when they're choosing their words carefully. "We reached them," she said carefully, "but they declined to be responsible. Mr. Bennett was here visiting another patient. He heard the doctor arguing on the phone and recognized your name. He stepped in." "Declined to be responsible?" They sounded like harmless words on a form, like something you might check in a box and move on. Underneath, the truth was rotten. My parents had chosen a party over my life. Champagne over surgery, applause over their own daughter's chest being cracked open on an operating table. I stared at the name on the chart again. New legal guardian, Harold G. Bennett. It should have felt strange seeing some older man's name where my parents had been all my life. Instead, it felt right. Like the universe had quietly corrected a clerical error no one had noticed for 31 years. Some parents get called to the hospital to save their child's life. Mine got called and said no. A retired sailor in a faded cap and a bad hip said yes. In that dim room, with monitors beeping steadily and pain wrapping around my ribs like iron bands, something inside me shifted. Part of me caved in, soft and broken. Another part hardened in a way I'd never felt before, cool and steady. I didn't know yet what it would mean, or how far it would go. I didn't know there would be a living room full of relatives hearing the truth read out loud. I didn't know there would be a day I walked out of my parents' house for the last time on my own terms. All I knew, staring at Harold Bennett's name in place of theirs, was this. If I survived this, I was never going to let my parents define what family meant to me again. When the morning light crept through the blinds and painted thin gold lines across my hospital blanket, I realized it was the first time since the accident that my mind felt even remotely clear. My body still hurt, sharp jolts when I shifted, a deep ache when I breathed too fully, but the fog inside my head had begun to lift. With clarity came reality, and reality was cruel. My parents had not visited, not once, not a call, not a text, not even a hollow, "Hope you're doing okay," sent through someone else. It wasn't the absence of their presence that hurt the most. It was the message inside that silence. You don't matter enough to inconvenience us. I used to tell myself you can't lose something you never had. Turns out you can. You can grieve the mother you wanted, the father you hoped would show up, and the family you kept pretending existed somewhere beneath the polished surface. A soft knock came at my door. I expected a nurse with charts or a tech checking my vitals. Instead, it was him. Mr. Bennett stepped inside wearing his faded navy cap, a clean flannel shirt, and holding a plastic grocery bag that crinkled when he moved. The wrinkles around his eyes deepened when he smiled. "You look better today," he said. "Color's back in your cheeks. That's a win." I pushed myself up a little, grimaced, and he immediately stepped forward. "Easy there, sailor," he murmured, handing me the bed controls. "You're stitched up tighter than a Thanksgiving turkey. Don't go tearing yourself open just because I walked in." Despite everything, a tiny laugh escaped me. It hurt like hell, but it felt real. "They say I might be able to sit up fully tomorrow," I said. "That's good," he replied, settling into the chair he'd clearly made his own. Progress is progress. He set the grocery bag down and produced a small thermos. "Brought you more soup, the good kind. None of that flavorless nonsense they give you on plastic trays." "You don't have to keep doing this," I whispered. "Maybe not," he said, his voice gentle but firm, but wanting to counts. No one had ever said something like that to me, certainly not my parents. We talked about nothing and everything, the weather turning colder, his stubborn hip that was older than most of the doctors here, stories about the base before half the buildings were renovated. Listening to him was grounding, normal, safe. Around noon, a nurse brought in a Ziploc bag filled with my personal belongings. Your phone, wallet, dog tags, all accounted for. She set it on the tray and walked out. My phone screen was cracked, spiderwebbing across the glass. My dog tags were deeply scratched, as if something sharp had scraped across them. My wallet was bent and warped. I powered the phone on. Notifications flooded in. Emails, spam, one missed call from the hospital, and one message from my sister. Just 3 words. Mom said no. My chest tightened. Not "are you okay?" Not "we're coming," not even "call me." Just that verdict. Cold, final, detached. Mr. Bennett watched my face carefully. "News?" I forced a breath. "Not really, just confirmation." He shook his head. That girl always cared more about her reflection than people. My breath left me in a painful broken laugh. "That's accurate." A knock interrupted us, and a social worker stepped inside with a clipboard. Her expression was a practiced blend of professionalism and empathy. "Ms. Navarro," she began, "I need to go over some of your next steps." "Sure," I said, bracing myself. She explained the medical plan, scans, monitoring, physical therapy, but I could tell she was circling something heavier. Finally, she gently laid her clipboard on the rail of my bed. "I don't want to intrude on your personal matters," she said carefully, "but it's my duty to inform you that your parents haven't returned any follow-up calls. Legally, you have the right to designate someone else as your primary emergency contact moving forward." "I already did," I said. She brightened slightly. "I heard that Mr. Bennett has been incredibly present and cooperative." He looked away, embarrassed. "Don't go making me sound like one of those saintly types. I'm as flawed as anyone." "You showed up," the social worker said softly. "Sometimes that's everything." Her words hit something fragile inside me. She handed me a form. "If you'd like him listed permanently, sign here." I didn't hesitate. My hand trembled as I scribbled my signature, but my decision didn't. It felt like undoing a knot I'd been tied into my whole life. After she left, the room felt quiet in the way hospitals often are. Machines beeping, carts rattling down the hallway, someone's TV playing a football game in another room. Holiday decorations lined the nurses' station. Crooked paper turkeys, glitter that refused to stay glued down, hand-drawn signs saying, "We're thankful for you." Funny, I thought. Strangers were thankful for me. My own family wasn't. Later that afternoon, a doctor with a rumpled coat and tired eyes stepped into the room. "Ms. Navarro," he said gently, "there's something you should see." He handed me a paper printout, a transcript. Hospitals normally don't share these, but I think even he couldn't stomach what he'd heard. I read the words. "If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." My mother's voice on paper. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something inside me just froze, like a pond sealed by sudden winter. Mr. Bennett watched me carefully. "You don't have to read that now," he murmured. "I need to," I said softly. "I need to stop pretending they're people they're not." He nodded once, a slow, steady nod of someone who knew exactly what that felt like. Day 3 blurred into day 4, pain meds, vital checks, physical therapy consults. The nurses learned I preferred the TV off, the lights dimmed, quiet voices. I learned that being alone doesn't sting as much when you're not waiting for someone who will never show up. By the fifth day, Mr. Bennett arrived at nearly the same minute he had every day, always with something small: soup, a newspaper, a joke he insisted was top-tier Navy humor. He sat beside me as I practiced breathing exercises, wincing every time I did. "You know," I said quietly, "I always thought the Navy taught me to depend only on myself." He nodded. "Nothing wrong with depending on people. Just make sure they're the kind who don't drop you when it counts." I thought of my parents' house, the curated perfection, the holiday photos, the rehearsed smiles. I thought of every time I'd tried to earn a scrap of approval. "I thought family was supposed to be those people," I whispered. He exhaled, leaning back with effort. "Family isn't blood. Family is whoever refuses to walk away." That sentence slid into me like a key turning a lock. On day 7, I was able to sit up with help. On day 8, walk a few feet with a therapist holding my arm. Each step felt like rolling a boulder uphill. My ribs protested every breath. Still no parents. Still no sister. But then the door opened, and my sister Stephanie walked in. Designer coat, perfect hair, perfect posture, eyes scanning the room like she was judging a hotel suite. "Wow," she said flatly. "You look rough." "Good to see you too," I said. She sat in the chair Mr. Bennett usually took. I felt myself tense. "Mom wanted me to stop by," she said. "She's been stressed. This whole thing made her look bad." There it was, the truth before the truth. "Made her look bad," I repeated. "Yeah, well," she huffed. "She was hosting a very important event. She couldn't just drop everything." "I was dying, Stephanie." "Oh, doctors exaggerate. Anyway," she shifted, crossing her legs. "Mom asked me to tell you that you can come home as soon as you're discharged. She's planning a Christmas brunch. She wants everyone looking put together." "Of course she does." "And," Stephanie added, digging in her purse, "Mom and Dad said you should handle the insurance paperwork. They don't want to deal with the bills." There it was, the real mission. I stared at her. For the first time in my life, I felt nothing toward her. No longing, no ache for approval, just a hollow, exhausted clarity. "I need you to leave," I said calmly. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "Leave, I'm tired." She scoffed. "You've become dramatic since joining the Navy. No wonder, Mom." "Goodbye, Stephanie." Something in my tone must have reached her, because she left without another word. A moment later, Mr. Bennett stepped into the doorway. "That bad?" he asked quietly. "Worse." He walked over and closed the door gently behind him. Then he sat down, leaned forward, and said the words that became the turning point of my healing. "You're building a new life now, kiddo. A new definition of family, a new sense of worth." "What purpose is there in surviving all this?" I whispered. "Why did I make it out?" He held my gaze. "So you can stop letting people treat you like a footnote in your own story." The tears came fast and hot, and for the first time, not because of pain, but because of truth, I let them fall. He squeezed my shoulder carefully. "Rest. You'll need your strength. You're going home soon." I didn't understand then just how right he was, because the moment I walked through my parents' door again would be the moment everything exploded. Discharge day arrived with a strange mix of relief and dread. My body was still bruised, stitched, aching, but my spirit felt sharper than it had in years, clearer. Like healing had forced the truth to rise to the surface, demanding to be faced. The doctor walked in with my paperwork. No heavy lifting, no sudden movements, absolutely no stress if you can avoid it. I almost laughed. No stress. I was heading back to the two people who had mastered the art of manufacturing it. Mr. Bennett wheeled me out of the hospital despite my protests. "I can walk," I said. "You can shuffle like a penguin," he corrected. "And if you fall, they'll blame me, and I'm too old to fight a lawsuit." He helped me into his old Buick, mint green, smelling faintly of peppermint and pine-scented air freshener. As he drove away from the hospital, he kept glancing at me, the lines around his eyes tightening. "You nervous?" he asked finally. I nodded. "I'm walking into the lion's den." "You're not going back," he said. "You're confronting. Big difference." Outside the window, neighborhoods rolled by. Modest brick houses, leafless trees swaying in the wind, American flags drooping in the cold. Everything felt familiar, yet distant, like I was visiting a place I used to live in another lifetime. "You sure you want to face them this soon?" he asked. "I need to," I said. "They made sure everyone knew they were handling everything. I won't let their version be the only one." He gave a low whistle. "You've got steel in you, Navarro. Your granddad would be proud." The compliment warmed something inside me. When we pulled up to my parents' house, it was exactly as I remembered it. Perfect, polished, performing. A big wreath on the door. an inflatable snowman on the lawn, soft glowing lights along the roof line, like a magazine spread, like a lie. Cars line the street, aunts, uncles, neighbors, a ready-made audience. "Want me to come in?" Mr. Bennett asked. I swallowed hard. "Not yet, but stay close. Always." I stepped out slowly, pain tugging at every movement. Every step across their driveway felt heavier. The closer I got to the door, the more the air smelled like honey-glazed ham and cinnamon potpourri. My mother's signature scent for company-ready holiday atmospheres. I opened the door. Noise hit me like a wave. Laughter, clinking dishes, someone telling a story too loudly. The smell of sweet potatoes and brown sugar brushed against me like nostalgia mixed with nausea. No one noticed me at first. It struck me, painfully, that this was the most fitting metaphor for my entire childhood. My mother stood in the center of the room, sipping wine, animated, glowing with the attention of her audience. My father leaned against the fireplace mantel, swirling a glass of brandy. Stephanie lounged on the couch, scrolling her phone, perfectly styled, perfectly bored. It was my cousin who finally saw me. "Camilla," she gasped, "you're walking." The room stilled, heads turned, conversations faltered. My mother's smile froze before she replaced it with an artificial one. "Oh, you're here. Good." Good, like a package that finally arrived. "Come in," she said, waving me in like she was letting a delivery driver inside. My father nodded once. "You look fine, see? Doctors exaggerate." I inhaled slowly to steady myself, sharp pain slicing through my ribs. "I need to talk to everyone," I said. My mother groaned. "God, can you save the drama? We're having dessert soon." A soft murmur spread around the room. A few relatives looked between us, worried. My cousin asked gently, "Camila, are you okay?" My throat tightened. No, I wasn't okay at all. I reached into my bag, pulled out the printed transcript from the hospital, and held it in my trembling hand. "I almost died." "Silence," my father scoffed. "Oh, don't be theatrical." So I began reading. "If she dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." Gasps, hands over mouths. Someone whispered, "Did she really?" My mother's face drained of color. "How dare you bring that here?" "How dare I?" My voice shook, not with weakness, but with restrained fire. "You said it." "That was not meant literally," she snapped. "The doctor caught me at a bad moment." "I was dying," I said. There is no good moment for that call. Stephanie crossed her arms. Mom was overwhelmed. "By what?" I asked. "Her dress code, the fundraiser?" Stephanie rolled her eyes. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." That was the moment something cold inside me finally locked into place. "Nothing," I repeated. "Almost dying is nothing." The room held its breath. I laid the second sheet on the table, the official record showing the signature that saved my life. "This," I said, "is who stepped up while you were entertaining your guests. New legal guardian, Harold G. Bennett." My mother gasped. "You let some stranger sign for you? That's irresponsible." "He saved my life," I said. "You abandoned it." Silence. A suffocating, heavy silence. My Uncle Ray stood, furious. "You refuse to sign? What the hell is wrong with you?" My mother stammered. "You don't understand. It was chaotic." "I understand perfectly," I cut in. "I understand you chose reputation over reality. You chose appearances over your daughter." My father's jaw tightened. "This is all very dramatic." "No," I said, "this is the truth." I straightened, wincing at the pain. "From this moment forward," I said, "you are not my emergency contacts. You are not my decision makers. You are not the people I depend on." Their faces twisted. Anger, embarrassment, dismay. And then, a voice behind me. "I think she's made herself perfectly clear." Mr. Bennett stepped into the room quietly, leaning on his cane. No theatrics, no raised voice, just quiet conviction. My mother spun toward him. "You had no right." "I had every right," he said calmly, "to save a good woman when her own family wouldn't lift a damn finger." A murmur rolled through the room. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. "I'm not here to fight," I said, my voice steady. "I'm here to close a chapter." And I walked out. Not fast, not dramatically. Just out. Every step hurt, but it was the cleanest pain I'd ever felt. Outside, cold air slapped my cheeks. The muffled chaos inside faded like a TV turned down in another room. Mr. Bennett waited on the porch. "You sure?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes." He offered his arm, not because I was weak, but because he understood. When we got into the car, I exhaled shakily. "Well," I said, "that went exactly as badly as expected." He chuckled. "Could have been worse. No one threw cranberry sauce." I laughed and winced. "Please don't make me laugh. My ribs hate you." He started the engine. "Your ribs will forgive me. Not sure your parents will forgive themselves, though. Give them a week, I said. They'll spin it. They always do. Do you care what story they tell? I looked out the window. No, I said softly. Not anymore. When he offered to let me stay at his place until I was strong enough to return to base housing, I tried to protest. He shut me down immediately. You think I'm dropping you off after all that? You're staying in the guest room. Worst thing you'll face is my snoring. His home was small, warm, cluttered with memories. Old Navy caps, framed service photos, a recliner that had survived decades. It felt more like home than my parents' mansion had in my entire life. That night, he handed me something wrapped in a small cloth. When I opened it, my breath caught. A military challenge coin, my grandfather's. He gave this to me after Korea, Mr. Bennett said. Told me if I ever found his kin, I should look out for them. I swallowed hard. He said that? Meant it too, he said softly. I think he'd want you to have it now. I closed my fingers around the coin, feeling the weight of legacy, of promises kept long after death. Thank you, I whispered. We take care of our own, he said, just like he had years ago. For a few days, peace settled around us, like a warm blanket. But peace doesn't last long when the past refuses to stay buried. On the morning of the fourth day, my phone rang. My mother's number. Mr. Bennett looked at me. You don't have to answer that. I think I should, I said. I put it on speaker. My mother's voice burst out, frantic, angry, trembling. Camilla, do you have any idea what you did to us? The calls, the messages, the embarrassment? Your stunt humiliated us in front of everyone. I felt nothing. Mom, I said calmly, I told the truth. You exposed private family matters. You refused to authorize life-saving surgery. That's not the point, she snapped. It's the only point. You should have given us a chance to explain. To explain what? I asked. That a party was more important than my life? Silence. Then, almost pleading, I need you to come home. We're having a Christmas brunch. I'm not your centerpiece, Annette, I said. I'm not an ornament for your image. You're our daughter. No, I said softly. I'm your daughter by DNA, that's all. Her breath caught. You're choosing that old man over us? I looked at the man who sat silently beside me, pretending not to listen while listening to every word. I'm choosing the person who showed up, I said. Then I ended the call and blocked her number. Mr. Bennett nodded approvingly. Good. Sometimes closing a door is the only way to keep the cold out. I exhaled shakily. Did you come up with that? Nope, he grinned. Read it on a tea bag once. And for the first time in weeks, I laughed without wincing. Christmas came quietly that year. No glittering centerpieces, no choreographed photos, no matching outfits chosen for social media. Just my small Norfolk apartment, a cheap plastic tree, leaning slightly to the left, and a box of decorations I'd bought from the dollar store because my body wasn't ready for much more. Mr. Bennett insisted on helping me set everything up, though helping mostly meant him complaining about the color of the lights and me laughing at how serious he took holiday aesthetics. 2 sailors from my unit, Parker and Morales, came over, both stuck in Virginia because plane tickets home had been too expensive. My widowed neighbor, Mrs. Halford, brought a store-bought casserole and apologized that it wasn't homemade, which made all of us laugh because none of us cared. The food wasn't fancy. A small ham, box stuffing, canned cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie with a giant crack down the middle. The apartment smelled of cinnamon-scented candles, ham, and a hint of artificial pine from the cheap tree. Somehow, it was perfect. We crowded around my tiny table, legs bumping into each other, plates wobbling every time someone shifted. Parker raised his plastic cup first. To Lieutenant Navarro, he said, grinning. Toughest woman I know. I shook my head. Compliments won't get you out of PT, Parker. Laughter rippled around the table. Then Mr. Bennett lifted his cup. His voice, usually steady and rough, softened. To Camilla, he said, proof that blood may start a family, but it doesn't have to finish it. The room quieted. My eyes stung. For a moment, I couldn't speak. To found family, I finally managed. To people who show up when it matters. We clinked our cheap cups together. In that moment, surrounded by mismatched chairs and flickering dollar store lights, I felt more at home than I had in 31 years. After dinner, we watched a Christmas movie on my old TV, everyone slowly drifting out as the night deepened. Mrs. Halford hugged me 3 times, pressing a small tin of homemade cookies into my hand, for later. The sailors saluted me jokingly on their way out the door. Finally, only 2 people remained in the apartment, me and the man who had signed for my life without hesitation. Mr. Bennet settled into the recliner, the springs squeaking like they always did. I curled up on the couch with a blanket draped over my legs. The glow from the Christmas lights flickered across the room. After a long silence, he cleared his throat. "You know," he said, "one of these days, your folks might call." "I know. What'll you do if they do?" I turned my grandfather's challenge coin in my hand, feeling the worn ridges with my thumb. The question hung in the air. "I won't chase them," I said finally, "and I won't bend to fit the picture they want. If they want something real, it has to start on equal ground." He nodded, as if that was the only acceptable answer. "Good," he said quietly. "That's what wearing that uniform teaches you too, how to stand." We fell back into comfortable silence, but the world wasn't done with me. Not yet. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed on the end table. Unknown caller. "Spam?" Mr. Bennet asked. "Maybe," I said, "maybe not." I answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "Camilla, it's me." My father's voice. For a moment, I said nothing. My heart didn't drop. My stomach didn't clench. I simply waited. "We heard you weren't spending Christmas with anyone," he said. "Your mother thought maybe you'd want to come by." I glanced around the room. The dim movie screen, the empty plates in the sink, the crooked tree, Mr. Bennet watching me with quiet support. "I'm not alone," I said. "I had people here." "Oh," my father faltered. "That's good." He cleared his throat, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. "Your mother hasn't been herself. This has been very hard on her." There it was, the old script, the guilt play, the performance. But this time I didn't step into the role. "Dad," I said steadily, "I almost died." Silence crackled across the line. "The hospital called you," I continued. "Both of you. You refused to sign. You didn't come. You chose a party over my life." "I know." His voice cracked. "I know, Camilla. There's no excuse. I failed you." The admission didn't feel like victory. It felt like truth, finally landing where it belonged. "You did," I said quietly. A tremor traveled through his breath. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't fix something like this with one call or one brunch," I said. "If you ever want a relationship with me, it starts with showing up. Quietly, consistently, no audience, no performance." He swallowed audibly. "I don't know if your mother can do that." "Then maybe it starts with you," I said. Another silence, this one different, honest, heavy, but real. "Would you be willing to talk again sometime?" he asked. "Just you and me. No promises. Just talk." The younger me would have leaped at that, would have grabbed the crumbs, hoping they meant more. The woman I had become held the phone gently, as if holding her own worth. "I'll think about it," I said. "But I won't go back to the old pattern. I won't be your prop." "That's fair," he whispered. "Merry Christmas, kiddo." The nickname tugged at something deep, but this time I answered it on my terms. "Merry Christmas, Dad." I ended the call. I waited for the guilt to come, the shaking hands, the need to fix. It didn't. Instead, I felt steady. Mr. Bennet exhaled. "You did good." "I don't know if I forgave him," I admitted. "Forgiveness is a road," he said. "Tonight you took a step. That's plenty." The Christmas lights blinked softly. The movie flickered. I held the challenge coin tightly. My scars still ached, but they no longer defined me. They were simply part of the map that led me here. People think revenge is fire, screaming, slamming doors, dramatic exits. Maybe sometimes it is. But my revenge was quieter. My revenge was choosing peace. My revenge was building a life they didn't get to claim credit for. My revenge was choosing people who showed up in hospital corridors, in cramped apartments, in simple Christmas dinners. My revenge was becoming the woman my younger self needed, even if my parents never changed. So if you're listening to this, and any of it feels uncomfortably familiar, hear me. You are allowed to choose your family. You are allowed to set boundaries with people who keep hurting you, even if they share your last name. You are allowed to say this was wrong and still leave a small door open for something better. And if someone stepped in when others stepped away, maybe a neighbor, a teacher, a friend, a gruff veteran, don't take that for granted. Thank them, call them, hold on to them. And if you'd like to hear more stories about honor, hard choices, and the families we build for ourselves, you can follow along. Share this with someone who might need it, or simply come back for the next one. Thank you for spending this time with me.